President Biden admitting that he, quote, screwed up in last week's debate against former President Donald Trump. He vows to fight on in the race for the White House, and NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba has the details.
President Biden celebrating our nation's history.
Happy Independence Day!
With his political future on the line. As sources tell NBC News, the next few days of his campaign are critical after last week's disastrous debate performance, which the president acknowledged in a radio interview.
I screwed up. I made a mistake. That's 90 minutes on stage. Look at what I've done in 3.5 years.
Mr. Biden insisting he's committed to staying in the race.
You got me, man. I'm not going anywhere. All right.
The public confidence comes as NBC News has learned the president is privately torn between defiance and acceptance amid calls to step aside, according to 4 people familiar with the matter, signaling in some conversations with allies, aides, and family members that the blowback may grow too large to overcome.
Yeah, he just quit, he's quitting the race.
Former President Trump made those false claims in a video he shared on social media, in which he also speculated over Vice President Kamala Harris becoming the Democratic nominee.
I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic. It's so amazing. It's just so bad.
The Biden campaign slamming those comments, writing, "No, Donald. What is bad is running on a platform of your revenge and retribution." The VP and President Biden met with more than 20 Democratic governors, now rallying around his candidacy.
I believe in this man. I believe in his character. I believe that he has been one of the most transformative presidents in our collective lifetimes.
California Governor Gavin Newsom, campaigning in Michigan, confirmed details of that White House meeting in which President Biden said he may limit events in the evening to get more sleep. When asked by one of the governors whether he had seen a doctor following the debate, the president conceded he had a brief checkup a few days after and was fine, according to 2 sources in the room, contradicting his own press secretary, who earlier in the day said,
"No, he was not checked by the doctor."
Let's bring in now professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude Jr., former MSNBC host and contributor to Washington Monthly, Chris Matthews, co-founder and CEO of Axios, Jim Vandai, former assistant to Obama officials Susan Rice and David Axelrod, Ravi Gupta. He's a host of the podcast Killing Justice and The Lost Debate. Reverend Al Sharpton and Molly Jong Fast also still with us. So, Chris Matthews, a lot of people on the phone over the past week. Melting down, I find, is only Democrats that can melt down. I'm curious, the way forward, is it to wait, give Joe Biden time and space, see what happens over the next week or so, see where the polls go, where the fundraising go, how the interviews go? Is that the best way forward?
Yeah, I think he's going to do this one step at a time with George Stephanopoulos today. And I think Stephanopoulos will be tough. I mean, he's been in the business of journalism now for decades, and I think he really wants to earn that title as sort of a Walter Cronkite. In other words, there has to be a tough debate. And that's going to be, to me, if I were the president, I would have basic answers that can be the familiar answers, but just get through it with confidence. And I think I hope the people around him are saying to him, just do what you've done before on immigration, on infrastructure, on Ukraine. Just stick to the basics, get through this interview, and then work on the press conference next week. I think he should hang in there for a couple weeks. We owe him that. I've watched this guy's career since 1972, when he didn't have a chance in Delaware, and he was elected senator against a multi-incumbent senator for a couple of terms. He won big surprise. He ran in 88, he ran in 08, and here he's finally got the presidency. He's going to hold on to it. I tell you one thing I've noticed in the last couple of days. There's a huge distinction between the people who are in the true inside with a candidate or a president, and everybody else in the world. You cannot break through. They are really tight. This crowd around the president, it may be 2 or 3 personal aides, even within that area of Michael Donna and those people. They're just a very, very small people who are keeping it completely secret. We don't know. We sit here and we don't know what condition he's in, what episodes have come on, how often the episodes have occurred since the Super Bowl, when they turned down that tremendous opportunity to speak to the country. So we don't know how long it's going. or how episodic it is. We don't know anything really. This is incredible story, the power of the very tightly knit Biden crowd. It's not even a crowd, it's a few people. This president is very protected.
Yeah, Eddie Glaude, what's the best way forward as far as you're concerned?
To my mind, Joe, the president just simply has to be transparent. He has to admit, as he's done and as his people have done, that he screwed up, that he's old and that he's trying to, deal with the issues that, the elderly have to deal with. But he's still competent. He's still capable of governing. He's still capable of running. I think at the end of the day, he has to be transparent. And he also, I think, has to emphasize the choice, right? I may be old and I may have had a bad night, but look who am I running against? It's a convicted felon. Look who's on the other side, a person who's threatening the very foundation of the country. And I think once that contrast is made clearly so that we can put the stakes in clear focus, then we can move on. But he has to be transparent, Joe, it seems to me.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. There has to be a transparency there. And, Rev, it's really something I hear the right and the Trumpers and the usual suspects, the tabloids, going after Joe Biden. And these are the same people that praised Ronald Reagan in his second term, who understood he was slipping, who understood and laughed when, the media couldn't get to Reagan, when they would ask Reagan a question and he seemed confused and Nancy would whisper the answer to him and then he would answer. That got picked up on mic a few times. And, these same Republicans would laugh. Look at that. The press, they can't get at our guy. And it got so bad for Reagan that even an incoming chief of staff, Howard Baker, commissioned a study on the 25th Amendment for Reagan in case they needed it. Of course, Ronald Reagan ended his presidency, had an iconic picture with Mikhail Gorbachev in front of the Statue of Liberty. That same year, you had the Berlin Wall falling, and Ronald Reagan leaving Washington with a 60% approval rating. So Republicans, Rev, it seems, in the past have not minded having an elderly man in the White House who had memory lapses, who had a terrible first debate, and who they had to stage manage because he was getting older. Now, of course, though, this is shocking and stunning, and they just don't know what they're going to do.
No, it really is amazing when you look at the history of how Republicans managed an elderly Reagan, how they managed Eisenhower, who had an attack while he was president, and who was a Republican. And now all of a sudden they are trying to make the country just seem like this is such a panic on what we don't know about Biden. We still don't know if it was a bad night or if it was something else. And I think he's earned the right with his achievements and his accomplishments as president for us to give him at least a couple of weeks to really decide what he's doing and to come forth. We'll see what happens with Stephanopoulos. We'll see what happens with the press conference. But they wanted the next morning immediately for him to start running relay races to prove something when their guy is sitting on a golf cart looking like the Duncan Doughboy, cursing every other word. So let me ask you, though, Jim, talking about Donald Trump, Van Hy, it was interesting to me how he dumped on Vice President Kamala Harris. And the vice president is being touted as, if necessary, being a candidate. I talked to her yesterday briefly. She says, no, Biden is all in. Don't worry about it. She's speaking in New Orleans at the Essence Festival. I'm going right after this show. What would be Donald Trump's strategy if, by some reason, he would have to run against Kamala Harris? Because polls are saying that she has really enhanced her position. She's really grown. What would be the Trump strategy facing the first woman and then first woman of color to be vice president and possibly president if that came the case? I'm not predicting that. I'm just raising a hypothesis.
First off, Trump would rather run against Biden, for sure. He feels like because of what happened on the debate stage, it's an easier race for him. He has, you saw what he said in those comments about Kamala Harris. He's going to say she's too liberal, she's too weak on the border, too weak on the economy, she's a phony, she's weird. You've seen it all from him so far. I will say that there's a lot of people around Trump who worry that he's underestimating her or underestimating anything other than Biden, meaning that, listen, yes, it would be messy. Yes, it would be unprecedented, but you would suddenly have a much younger ticket. You would no longer have the age question as a real issue. In fact, it could become your liability because you'd be a lot older than the candidate. There'd be a lot of free public attention on that convention. There's a lot of money around there. The money would come regardless of who the candidate is. And it's a little bit harder for him to play hardball and to attack a minority woman than it is Joe Biden. It just is. And I think there's a worry because they're looking at who are the swing voters that are left. A lot of them are women. A lot of them are independent, kind of like some of his policies, worry about his style. And would that backfire? And so it's a big question. You guys had the conversation that he's in until he's not. And Chris said something very, very important. There's a huge distinction between the people on the payroll and who love him as a family member and the rest of Democrats. Almost every Democrat we're talking to, which I think might be different than some of the folks on the panel are, they are really, really worried. These are aides. These are people at the White House, at the DNC, in elected office. They're looking at polling coming out of Minnesota. They're looking at New Hampshire. They're looking at places that shouldn't be in play. They're looking at Virginia. They're listening to their voters. They're listening to their donors. They're in a massive panic. And now everyone's scrutinizing every single thing Biden does. The New York Times has this whole story picking apart almost every sentence of the 2 radio interviews that he did. And he did say some weird things in there. Well, imagine that you, or even if you're at the top of your game, if someone's scrutinizing every single thing you say, that's his reality.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn. MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.